You're on the Six Screens Telenetwork, earning the reputation of giving all the right ingredients, uninhibited, in exposing the hard, cold facts about the Watchtower Society. And now, the end is near.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome into our Sunday program. And our Sunday programs, if you might have noticed, if you've been listening in right along, our Sunday programs take on a spiritual feel. We get into theological discussion. We get into scripture. But today we have a program, very fascinating program. It is called Jehovah's Witnesses Share Their Spiritual Journey. Now, many witnesses are leaving the organization right now. And of course, the Jehovah's Witness organization would always tell its adherents, its members, that they had the truth. And where would you go when you leave the witnesses? What's going to happen to you? And I tell you, they frighten so many people to death, and they're so afraid of spirituality. So let's see what our friend Jeff, who's a former Jehovah's Witness, he's going to be being interviewed by Anne Marie. And you guys can come on now, and I'll cut out away here and let you guys do it. Go ahead, Anne-Marie.
Well, thank you, my brother Rick. Jeff, are you there?
Yes, Anne-Marie, I'm here.
Fantastic. I want to thank you for coming on today. Let me first just welcome everyone in. It is our Six Screen Sunday. We only do it every other week. And today is Sunday, February 12th, 2023. We have a guest. His name is Jeff, and he's going to share with us, if he doesn't mind, I'm looking forward to hearing his testimony, his experience, how he came to be in Watchtower, what his life was like in Watchtower, how he felt, any concerns, how he got out, and where he is today in his spiritual journey. We all have a spiritual journey, and we're all individuals, so it's different for each one of us. Jeff, again, thank you so much. Would you like to share with us what life was like with you coming into Watchtower and in Watchtower, coming out and today?
Well, Anne-Marie, it was, I kind of felt like it was a big trick how I got roped into Watchtower. I mean, of course, they don't tell you about all the shunning, and everybody else is going to die at Armageddon, and the blood policy and everything up front, you know, and they only talk about resurrecting the dead and paradise earth, you know, and yeah, I was all right around 20 years old, and I was 21 when I started really studying and going to the Kingdom Hall, but right around 19, 20 years old, I was working for a witness, and I kind of figured out that he was counting his hours he had an auto body shop. He was counting his hours to talk to me. And I would, you know, because usually they only hire witnesses. And he didn't pay much at all. I just kind of wanted to learn a trade. It was mainly auto body repair. And he would talk to me throughout the day, you know. And, yeah, that's kind of how I got started there with him, you know, as far as him preaching to me and me working for him.
Hey, Jeff, this is Rick Farron at the control panel here. Can you come a little closer to your microphone?
Well, yeah,
Yeah, I was going to ask him the same thing. Yeah. I can hardly hear you. I have my volume up all the way, and it's still hard to hear you. Is your volume up all the way? Yeah, we can hear you. Just, do you have your volume up, Jeff?
Yes, I do.
Oh, you know what, Jeff? I hear you loud and clear now. Thank you so much. We don't want to miss a word. Okay, so you're working at the auto body, and this guy who's a witness is witnessing to you. That's real important. They need to count that time. Please continue.
Yeah, he was second generation witness, and he he's long past. I would say he's long passed on now. I know he moved out of the area. In the 90s, late 90s. But anyway, that's kind of because he didn't want to hire anybody. But looking back on it, I figured, well, yeah, he was counting his hours, and because he really wasn't the type to go out in service. I know he did some, but he just did not have the personality to do it. And his wife always went out in service. I remember that. But anyway, it started with that, and he misled me on quite a few things about Jehovah's Witness doctrine and what have you. To basically get me to go to meetings and start Bible studying. And I thought the meetings were long and everything else, but I thought everything, I bought it line, hook, and sinker as far as that generation prophecy. And this was right around 86, 87. I thought, man, this is real, And, and then he kind of backed things up by world conditions and everything else. And I agreed that things are really bad. This pretty rough world we live in. And anyway, I started going to meetings and more meetings and Bible studies, and then I eventually started going out in service. And none of my family, by the way, were witnesses, and they were totally against it. They didn't like it at all. And I remember at the time my parents were still alive. My mother finding a New World Translation and a Live Forever book, a small one that I was studying over at their house at night, and she walked up to me the next day and handed that to me, and she says, "Do not let your father find this." He was just totally anti-religion, and so that's kind of where that was there. And there was no talking to my mother. I could talk to her a little bit, but my father, he just stopped you right there. And I wish I would have listened to him. And anyway, that's where that was there. I missed a lot of birthdays, a lot of Christmases, a lot of Thanksgivings with my family that I can't go back and get. A lot of them are passed on now, and those times are gone. Even after I left the so-called truth, I still didn't celebrate that because I thought I was still serving Jehovah, and it, anyway, as far as spiritually, I still prayed, after I left the organization. And, I thought I was a dead man. When they told me that basically I was on the fence and we're not going to have that anymore. And, and I always kept thinking about my immediate family. They're not in this organization. And, they didn't want no part of it. But in 1990, I had that last meeting with one of the elders, well, two of them actually, and they wanted me to basically straighten my act up or ship out. And I just told them, I remember it was a cold January day. I said, I'm done. And I remember leaving that day, and I just thought I was a dead man. I didn't think I'd reach age 30 You know, I knew Armageddon, or I thought Armageddon was coming real soon, and that generation kept getting older and older. So, anyway, you know, I continued to pray. I stayed away from, like I said, birthdays and Thanksgivings and holidays, what have you. And, you know, I couldn't step into another church because I thought it was Babylon the Great, you know, and it was all false. And I still believed everything I was taught by witnesses. And that's kind of where it went, you know. And I think I did. In the late 90s, I went to another church, or I went to a church. I know, you know, we you know, you call the witnesses there at Kingdom Halls and everything else, but I went to another religious group, and I was just numb, you know. I just didn't know, I didn't know what to think, you know. I didn't believe anything they were telling me, for one thing, and I guess I could say I'm agnostic. I'm not an atheist by any means, but I do believe in a little bit of power of prayer. I think it's more of positive thinking than anything. But anyway, yeah, I mean, go ahead and ask any more questions. I'll answer what I can.
Well, one thing, I don't know if it's a question, but I hear it in your voice.
Yeah.
Not just not just a regret, but kind of a, I can't put my finger on the word. It's hard for me to articulate, but kind of a lost regret. Like, I wish I could go back and never have gotten involved with those people.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Can't take it.
Yeah. You just took the words out of my mouth. Yes. Yes,
I can hear.
I remember halfway through.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
No, this is your time, Jeff.
Okay. Yeah. I remember halfway through, and or towards the end, like the third year, and I go, "Oh my God, what did I get myself into?" You know. I mean, I thought I just, you know, I took myself into deep water. When I was a teenager, long before the witnesses, I boxed a little bit, and I was in amateur boxing, and I remember that, you know, there was a term being pulled into deep water, and it was when a guy kind of, you could overpower him, but I'd be sparring him, and I would go, he'd just keep away from me until he tired me out, and then he'd come in and get me. And that was kind of the same feeling I had, but way worse, you know. I thought it was a huge life mistake, and it was, you know, because I didn't plan for a retirement like I should have, because I thought Armageddon was coming. I didn't, there was a 401k that was just, it got real super lucrative. I didn't get into that. I wouldn't work, I'm a former railroader. I didn't work weekends, and that really helps your retirement build, you know. I mean, when you work overtime, I thought, what's the use? I'm going to die at Armageddon. Armageddon's going to come, and that's, you know, and you know, Anne Marie, as well as anybody else that was involved with the witnesses or what have you. I mean, they discouraged any kind of preparing for retirement, because that's not going to happen. You're not going to need it, you know.
Yeah. That's all we heard. Armageddon's coming. It's just around the corner. Don't go to school. Don't get training. Don't invest in a career. You won't have time.
Absolutely.
Nothing about retirement. And so many people like you. One of my great-grandfather worked for the Missouri Railroad. And, you know, this is a big deal that you literally lost a lot of money and security because of what Watchtower drummed into your head. A lot of times when I have a testimony, I hear a testimony, I always hear, I believe, but we need to reiterate over and over, this is what they indoctrinated us with, that if we leave, we're going to die. That if we do this, God's not going to be happy with us and we're going to die. It's just constant fear, and they set you up for failure. When you fail, it's your fault. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm just listening to you, Jeff.
That's great. Yeah, you're exactly right. I remember I was told I knew the truth and I would die at Armageddon. You know, you know the truth, and now you're not doing anything about it, and you're going to die at Armageddon for sure. You know, and oh yeah. I mean, it was just like the black curtains. I mean, and that's why I didn't have children. You know, I had one daughter, but I didn't have children because I had one elder tell me, he says, "You're just going to bring them down with you at Armageddon," and it is terrible. You know, it scared the living daylights out of me. But I mean, I believe the doctrine. I took it hook, line, and sinker. I mean, completely. And all they are is a former publishing company now disguised as a nasty cult, and that's all they are, and that's all they'll ever be. And
well, it's kind of the other way around. They are a nasty, tyrannical, controlling cult. Disguised as a publishing company. They are.
They are exactly what you say, ma'am. But I mean, they are a corporation. I mean,
But the main reason main way they make money is, have you ever looked at how much stock they have in commerce, tobacco companies, medical supplies, anything they can make money off of? But the biggest thing is they are a real estate conglomerate. They have more money flowing in from all of their cashing in on the kingdom halls that a lot of the witnesses built with their own free labor, paid for by witnesses, and then the Watchtower sells them off. They've been closing down branches, selling off a lot of them, I assume. I don't know. But why would you close down branches and not do anything with the property? I know they sold off the one in Egypt, and they've been, closing down assembly halls, selling them off. They have been raking in millions and millions of dollars, and then they go on and do these Caleb and Sophia videos. First, they want the ice cream money, make a little child feel guilty that 50 cents in her hand, she's looking forward to the next time that ice cream truck comes. She's all looking forward to that ice cream cone. And then she goes up to the truck and she holds that 50 cents in her hand and she looks at it. And in her mind, she's thinking of the worldwide witnessing work. Oh, I want to serve Jehovah. So she takes that 50 cents, doesn't buy her ice cream, and happily puts it in the contribution box. Do you know how many children were moved to do that? How much money the Watchtower raked in with that? But that wasn't enough. Then they had to make a video about Caleb and Sophia getting guilted out of breaking open their piggy bank and giving their allowance to the Watchtower. So they have no conscience, Jeff. They don't care, and they got mad at you because they couldn't suck you all the way in.
Yeah, exactly. Everything you're saying is true. I mean, and those poor children are just completely vulnerable and indoctrinated into that crap. I saw it firsthand, and I remember the light shunning, and then I was shunned there at the end, and I finally, the best thing I did, looking back, is I just stayed away from them. I just plain, if I went to a grocery store, I remember going into a grocery store once and just walking out. I saw an elder and his wife, and I just walked out. I left. And I remember where I was living at the time, that elder that brought me in, I would just take a different route into the city of what he would take, just so I didn't see him. And that was the best thing I did, is just, hey, stay away from him, and I kind of played the shun game too, and that helped me a lot, because when I'd see him, I would get upset, it'd bother me. Of course, nobody would talk to me, but just the same, it just bring back that thought of mind of Armageddon coming soon and everything else, and I did my best to tune it out, but I'll tell you what, it was really traumatizing, and
yeah, I know.
The depression was just unreal, and it's just, I'm looking back at all that wasted mind thought, and I remember when 2000 come along, and I go, my God, Armageddon hasn't come yet. I thought, well, I had one elder tell me, maybe, it told me years, like 12 years before, Jehovah might make these people live longer, and that's what I thought. For a while, I thought, well, maybe Jehovah's making these people live longer, that generation theory. And, and I know they come out with that extended generation and stuff like that.
Did you see that video where Splain was trying to explain this overlapping generation? Now we see by this chart here that Freddie Franz was born in 1893, and oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't think I saw that one. All the ones you're talking about before I've seen, but is it old? Is it an older video?
Well, I don't know how old it is, but obviously it came out after they tried to fool all the witnesses with this overlapping generation teaching, because you made mention of in the 80s, this generation was old and dying off. What a lot of people need to understand is the witnesses, to control everybody, would use the fear of Armageddon, and how they did it is they used Jesus saying this generation will not pass away until all these things occur. So they said, well, this generation started in 1914. When they originally were really pounding it in, they said that this generation started basically in 1900, because they said when 1914 arrived, supposedly when Jesus became king of the kingdom and the generation began, whatever, that would not pass away, they said you had to be of the age of understanding, which at the time they said
be aware of what was going on, like World War I, and starting that year, and
So let me finish, please. Awesome. What they were saying is that you had to be about the age of 14. Well, and then they would go forward and say, well, the Bible says you only can live 70, maybe 80 years. So they were basically saying, this year, it's the 50s, this is 60s, this is 70s. This generation that Jesus was talking about is dying off, and Armageddon's coming any minute. Well, Armageddon was always coming any minute in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. So what we're saying is what they did is they started off with about the age of understanding, maybe 15, 16, 14. Then they lowered it to 12, and then 10, and then they started getting younger and younger, because they were trying to stretch the timeline, because the more time passed and the generation obviously still hadn't died off, so they had to stretch it. Then it became, well, if you were born 1914, then it was if you were born around 1914, and then it was, oh my God, and they kept stretching it, and they even published a Watchtower, which on the front they had all these older witnesses.
Well, Anne-Marie, I'm here, Jeff.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. I wanted to unmute and I accidentally muted. Sorry. The witnesses put out a Watchtower. I forgot when it was, that showed a bunch of older witnesses with glasses and gray hair and so on, saying, this generation will not pass away. Of course, they're all long dead. So when it got later and later, people are going to go like, well, wait a minute, this generation will not pass away until all these things occur. But all of those people that weren't supposed to pass away Armageddon's still not here and they're all dead. So they had to come up with something other than born around 1914. Now we have the overlapping generations. So Brother Splain of the governing body, it was just hilarious because his name is Splain, S-P-L-A-N-E, Splain, and he's trying to explain with this stupid paper chart, like a big white tablet that he used to see at school. And he's just in a stick. And we can see here that Fred Brands was born in 1893 and and baptized in, oh my God, 1913, I think you said, whatever. But anyway, you can find it on YouTube, but it's hilarious. And Mike and Kim on YouTube, I don't know, do you ever listen to Mike and Kim on YouTube?
Yeah. I may have passed it up.
You might be able to find it because they did a video on that. In fact, Mikey did a hilarious, skit using that. He made up his own. We have this BS chart here, and as you can see, Kim and Mikey were born in the time of the screw generation, the 1975. Anyway, I'm sorry, I messed up. Please continue. I just wanted to kind of clarify that generation thing.
Yeah. I everything you're saying is how I remember it, and anyway, it just and then I remember moving on forward at 2014 coming along, I thought, oh, that's going to be 100 years. Something will happen this year, And by that time, I'd been away from them for years, And when nothing happened that year, I thought, well, I think they missed it. So I knew it was a bunch of BS, And it took me several years after that to do some research on them, and I just couldn't believe what I found. I mean, I could not believe of the child sex abuse. I saw the Australian Royal Commission. I just didn't think that organization had any of those problems, Then I saw what really blew my mind is all the failed predictions, and going all the way back to the 1870s, where they were the Bible students up till the 30s. Then they became Jehovah's Witnesses. But this Charles T. Russell, he made several predictions in the 1800s that didn't come through. And then he predicted 1914, which I did not know any of this, and that didn't happen. And one of his, people that were in with him in the Bible students was high ranking or whatever, said, oh, well, Jesus came, but he came invisibly. And I'm reading all this, and then I heard that they claimed that 1918 they predicted then, and then Armageddon, and then 1925 was a big one that Rutherford said that millions now living will never die. And I heard they made several predictions before 75. I knew about the 75 prediction, but I did not know about all these others. And
just to clarify real quick, I'm sorry for interrupting, but you know what, Jeff, your testimony is not only extremely important, but for the people that when they listen to your testimony, if they don't understand what you mean about what Russell predicted for 1914, he predicted that Armageddon would have come and gone. All the other religions would be gone. In 1914, it would be over. Then later, the Watchtower changed it to it was the beginning of the generation that would not pass away. And as far as millions now living will never die, I believe Rutherford gave that talk in 1919 in Cedar, Ohio. If I'm wrong, I'm sure I'm wrong. I don't have a perfect memory. But then they came out with what they called the Millions campaign, where they just put a fire under everybody's behind, and they were out there preaching that, basically Armageddon was just around the corner and millions now living will never die. And the crazy thing was, about 10 years ago, Watchtower came out with an article with a black and white drawing of a graveyard and gravestones. And the caption underneath said, "Millions now dead will live again." This is what Watchtower does. They preach, they predict, they say this, they name dates and whatever. And then when it doesn't happen and people die off or people get disgusted and leave the Watchtower, the younger ones stay in and they forget their history. This is why they don't want you to know their history, or the ones that get drug in that never knew. It's very important to explain these things. Thank you so much, Jeff, and please forgive me for interrupting.
No, man, that's fine. That's why they've ordered a lot of their literature, destroyed. I mean, I have an old Revelation book from the 80s, if you remember that, and I know and then the Live Forever book, just 2 books to mention, those are all been ordered to be destroyed, and then there are horrid illustrations they would have in these books, it were just, they'd show this stuff to children and things like that. And I just looking back and you can't take a child to a rated R movie and they're showing, the ground opening up and cars falling in and buildings on fire and people running and everything. And they're showing these kids that. That's just incredible. I mean, it was traumatizing enough as an adult to see this stuff, I mean, but anyway, I just didn't need that in my life, and I'd be so much further ahead, that my life would be completely different if I would not have gotten involved with that cult. And it gave me a total different mindset than than a normal person had, I mean, and I thought I was this horrible worldly person, and gosh, it was just so much wasted thought. That's all I can say. And it took a toll on me after years, after leaving, I mean, especially the first 10 years.
Yeah, I can hear it. How long have you been out, Jeff?
1990. That's when I had that last meeting with 2 elders, and I just disappeared. And
I have a strong suspicion that you didn't do therapy. Did you ever see a therapist for this?
Well, I was having anxiety attacks. That's a good question. I was having anxiety attacks and everything else, and they had me on medication. And that therapist, he kept asking me, "What's wrong?" And I thought I was bringing reproach on Jehovah's name if I would tell him the truth of what was wrong. I mean, I'd hear a big bang. I thought it was Armageddon, And I was always afraid and, to listen to news reports on TV. I'd hear them say peace and I'd get so scared, so yeah, that was the extent of my therapy. I was afraid I was bringing reproach on Jehovah's name if I would tell them the truth of what was bothering me, what the problem was. And it
sounds like you also have post-traumatic stress syndrome, because PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder, because you were so traumatized with the fear and the shame and the guilt and more fear, even though you weren't physically in the Watchtower was still in you. And
yes.
it can really, really just really destroy you. And years might go by, but if you don't deal with this issue. Personally, I never, ever talked about my trek in the Watchtower with the therapist. It didn't even enter my mind, but I knew I had issues. I didn't realize it was so bad, but I was afraid of everything. If somebody caught me from behind, I would jump and my heart would race. If I was terrified of thunderstorms, I was terrified of loud noises. I was terrified of somebody being angry with me. Like I was always worried about somebody being mad at me or not having approval. I was a mess. And I had no self-esteem. I was afraid to think for myself. I thought everybody else was smarter than I was, that I didn't have a brain, that if I made a decision, I knew it was wrong. I had to check with 20 people, see what they thought. These are all issues that they instill in us to beat us down. They make you afraid to use your own mind. So one thing I learned, and I want to encourage you and everyone, if you can find someone that you can talk to, a good therapist will just listen to how you talk, what you say, how the words you use, your intonation, your gestures. I hear in your voice, you are deeply, it's like somebody stomped on you and stomped on you and stomped on you. And then when they finally stopped, you said, I got to go and try to get away from here. But you're damaged. You're so damaged. And a therapist helps you to see what they see and helps you to see it from a distance, so it doesn't hurt you so much to look at it, because the damage just keeps on damaging. And then they give you, I guess, life skills or whatever, because I know I don't take any of them, you know what, anymore. But it took a lot of therapy. And I just get this feeling that you never did that for yourself. I always say therapy is the gift you give yourself.
I'll tell you a good therapy. The best therapy I've gotten is meeting Dan and Angela, and then putting me onto six screens onto this show, and then doing my research has been good therapy. They didn't tell you about all their failed predictions. They didn't. I mean, they are so manipulative and deceiving. They twist things around. They lie. I mean, it's incredible to find all this out years later. And if I could have had this in the 90s, because I was an absolute mess, like you were saying back then, and I just, they're not very, it's not a very smart organization, because, I mean, what they do to people, I mean, the internet's there now. People can research them. And I could only imagine how they hate the internet. And they're just, people just can't, they're not going to get by with lying and then trying to cover up false doctrine anymore, because people can, again, they can research them. And that's what I encourage everybody to do that's listening to this program, is don't take it from anybody. Do your research on this organization, and you will see all their false prophecies, their lies, all the suicides, all the people that have died from that stupid blood doctrine. I mean, they need to be sued, period, over that, and the shunning, is criminal. All the people that have committed suicide over that. I had a friend last summer who committed suicide over it. So, I mean, it's just, I don't know. That's good therapy for me. And good therapy, it's free. I love Rick's show because Rick he don't ask for no money. And I know he puts a lot of weight, and you do too, Anne Marie and Dan and Angela and everybody else. He put a lot into this show for, just to help people, and help them move on from this nasty cult. And anyway.
Well, I'm really glad that you found the six screens, Jeff. And, like I said, everybody's different. Everybody has their own journey. It's just on a practical side, I feel the way I feel about, therapy. That's just my personal opinion. I am so glad you found Dan and Angela and the 6 screens. We can do research all day long, and that's great. It's good to know the truth. But when we have psychological and emotional and mental damage, it's this cult, I don't even think we even really realize the depth of the damage, because they're not just a cult. They are evil. The most evil person in the world can be beautiful. Even the Bible talks about that, how the ministers, something about ministers of Satan, they're so beautiful and so reasonable, and they seem so nice. And it says, no, they're basically just like him. They act like they're so good. And that's the scary thing. I'd rather deal with an evil, hateful person who's evil and hateful to my face, so I can clearly see who they are. But when they come at you under the guise of representing God, under the guise of love, they're there because they love their neighbors and they want you to live. But they're a cult of the worst, insidious, hateful, scary kind, because they get to you with these really powerful, basic mind control tools to get complete control of you. It's just like the snake in the garden came at Eve in such a way that she didn't feel threatened in any way. Is it really so that God has said that you must not eat of the tree? She didn't feel threatened. He wasn't coming across in a mean way or a threatening way, and that's how they get you. Everything they say, the way they say it, makes so much sense. Like you were saying how you were worried about your family. Your mom didn't want to hear about this religion. Don't let your father see this book. They always tell you as soon as they can, oh, by the way, if you tell any of your friends or your family that you're studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, be prepared, because Satan will use them to try to get you to stop learning about Jehovah. I mean, they cover all their bases. Go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting again.
No, that's fine. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they said that now don't be surprised. I remember early on, don't be surprised that you get a lot of discontent or what have you, negative energy back, or not energy, but negativity back from trying to to show them, or to preach to them, and then they enforced that, Satan has got a lot of power with other people, worldly people, it was a well thought out plan, how they added on through the years and just made this cult so powerful in people's minds. And the 80s and 90s, I think, was their last hurrah. Then the internet come, and that's really set them back. And I hope it keeps setting them back, because their numbers, they got to be lying about their numbers. They're not 8.5 million.
Yeah. We know they're lying. Yeah.
Because there's Kingdom halls in my area that have closed down, especially the small towns. And if their numbers were growing or staying the same, they'd be, they'd still be there. So I'm just, and I can see the XJW community. I mean, how many people are in it? There's thousands and thousands, and it's incredible how big it is. And these people, this organization is, I think their days are limited. I mean, they may still exist in 10 years, but I would bet that they're very small. We'll say that anyway. But
Yeah, and I can't help but wonder, how can the witnesses watch Kingdom Hall after Kingdom Hall be sold out and still believe the Watchtower claiming, oh, they're coming in by leaps and bounds, and we need 14,000 more Kingdom Halls, and keep that money coming in. It's like,
yeah,
it's like they want to be gullible. They want to believe whatever horse shit they're being fed. Oh, it's from Jehovah. What a blessing from Jehovah. How in the heck is that a blessing when you can never give enough money, and you're a constant fear because they can, take your life away? It's like they feel like Watchtower holds their life in their hands. And their family and friends are held hostages. If you ever fall out of favor with Watchtower, they'll take everything away from you.
oh yeah, absolutely. The Timos are being held hostage. There's a lot of them can't leave or don't want to leave because they don't want to lose their family, and friends. And that's a criminal act, and I believe it's Article 18 of the United Nations that is a law that they cannot, for an organization to do that to members, whether it's religious or not, to shun and encourage family and what have you to shun other members that leave. I think Belgium and the Netherlands are doing something about that. They're looking into the shunning, and they got a real racket going. They have for years. I remember how big they grew in the 80s and 90s. Now, my area, they didn't grow much, and I remember the circuit overseer coming in and saying that there's always been a problem with my area. But I was dumb enough to get involved. I could say that. But, they're just, I know there's a small town in Iowa east of me that the Kingdom Hall, I was talking to some folks or a gal that her son went there with another, was invited by a witness to come to the memorial. Or it could have been a meeting, just a regular meeting. But anyway, he went and he said that they locked the doors after the meeting started. And, I know there's a Catholic church not far from me that during Mass, they don't lock the doors. So that just tells you that they know that they've made a lot of enemies with this shunning policy and things like that. I mean, nobody's got a right to go do anything bad. I'm just saying they've made a lot of enemies. There's a reason they lock those doors, And I condone any kind of violence towards them. But I do believe that people have a right to protest out in front of the Kingdom Halls. I encourage that. And, be there and with banners and what have you, and talk to people and tell them, hey, do some research here on this organization. So.
Well, I think the Watchtower is also the reason why they might lock the doors. Might be a reason is because a lot of people, who have left Watchtower, they're afraid of quote unquote wicked apostates spreading lies from Satan would come into the meeting and disrupt it and try to tell the flock how evil Watchtower really is. Because they don't want to hear it. It's like the Bible said, they just want their ears tickled. They don't want to hear the truth. They're supposed to be lovers of truth, but they really don't want to hear the truth. They just want to keep on being little sheeple. They care more about their standing. They care more about this wicked cult's approval. And as long as you just keep on doing the Watchtower two-step and keep that theocratic smile and talking that theocratic language, oh, I'm in good standing with the Watchtower. But you know what? The Bible says that in front of God, each one will render an account. Can you imagine a Jehovah's Witness, which they're not even witnesses of God, they're really Watchtowerites. What they really are is a follower, a faithful slave, a faithful, obedient slave of Watchtower, thinking that they're good by not using their brain, by quietly and obediently following Watchtower, working for Watchtower, and promoting Watchtower and believing whatever Watchtower tells them to believe. And they think like, oh, I'm serving Jehovah. No, you don't. You know down deep in your heart, God, Jesus never said, oh, by the way, even though I paid for all your sins, oh, by the way, even though everything's paid for, just come follow me. Jesus and none of the apostles ever said, oh, by the way, there's going to be an organization that's going to come along in about 2,000 years. And by the way, if you don't join them and obey them and believe what you're told to believe and don't question them, and if you're not loyal to them, you're going to die at Armageddon. Did anybody ever say anything like that, Jeff?
Yeah. When I worked on the railroad, we had a guy that was an atheist, and he made more sense. I just listened to him. I didn't, totally agree with him, but I'd listen to him. But he got into we were putting in railroad ties, and we were working hard. And he got in an argument with a born-again Christian. And the guy that was an atheist, his name was Steve. Finally, that born-again Christian said to him, he says, Steve, don't you want to be saved? And Steve said, saved from what? And they're like 10 guys, and we're listening to, everybody started laughing, and I don't know. Yeah, I just, one religion has got a twist on everything, and another one's got a different twist, and this other religion, and if you don't follow, it's the same old crap. If you don't follow their ways, their doctrine, you're going to somehow perish, you're going to die and never live again, or you're going to go to hellfire, which witnesses don't believe. But if you do follow their doctrine, you're going to inherit some kind of paradise or a utopia, or go to some heavenly place or something like that. It's all the same crap, and why can't a person just pull a Bible out and read it himself or herself and believe whatever you want to believe? You don't need that's why I'm against organized religion. I think it's all just a money-making scam, all of it. But that's my opinion.
No, I have to agree with you. Not that there aren't wonderful Christian fellowships. And, is that my phone squeaking? Jesus never preached religion. In fact, if you want to look at it this way, the Jewish religion that he was born into, he fulfilled every law, every mandate, every procedure, every rule. But when he was done, he walked out, basically became an apostate, according to the Jewish faith. He walked out and said, follow me. He never preached religion, never. None of the apostles ever preached religion. Religion is just another way of organized religion. I'll just say it that way. Any religion that tells you have to do this or else, you can't do that or else. We're the only one that have the truth. We're the only ones that are in enlightened. If you don't believe what we believe, you're doomed. It's all about control and the flesh and whatever. Go ahead, dear.
Yeah, what you just said right there is exactly right. I mean, they but the Jehovah's Witnesses really mastered it. And I remember the last memorial, of course, they know who I am. I called from a different phone because I was talking to an elder, and he goes, we don't pass the plate, getting down to money. And I spoke up, but I said he didn't know my history. I just only gave a first name, and that was it. And I says, look, I says, they don't make their money by passing the plate. And I just said regular churches. I says, or I said religions, you know, they don't make their money by passing the plate. Where they get their big money is private donations, or when somebody dies, they give them a house, or maybe they did save some money. Even some witnesses have, you know, I mean, they're in situations where they did save, which Watchtower discouraged, you know, for a retirement or what have you. But that's where they get their big money, you know. I've been to a Catholic mass within the last 5 years, and I remember them passing that plate, and you know, people would put $1 or $2 on there. There was nothing, never a 20 or anything. You know, people didn't put big money on that plate. It comes from private donations, and the Jehovah's Witnesses always brag, we don't pass the plate. You know, well, that isn't where you make your big money. You know, they deceive and lie to people so much. Looking back, it's just incredible. You know, and
Yeah, we're running short on time, and I've been fascinated with your testimony. I just wanted to add one thing about spirituality. Spirituality, in my opinion, has nothing to do with religion or your belief in this or that. You know, when you're walking along the shoreline and you're just with yourself and feeling the energy all around you, that's spirituality. When you go into an old forest and lean up against a redwood tree, you can feel the energy. And when you're quiet, you can feel it. And that's spirituality to me. When you watch a honeybee gathering nectar from flowers, that's a spiritual thing. When you look up at the sky at night and look at the stars and just feel the energy, I believe personally in the Almighty Creator. I believe in angels. I believe in spirit guides. I believe in the energy of the universe. And I truly believe that each one of us as an individual can be guided and will be guided according to what we need when we need it, not according to anybody else's opinion or what they believe or what they think you should believe. And I want to applaud you, Jeff, for having the courage and to come forward and to share your testimony. But since we are pretty much out of time, I want to ask Rick, I'm sure we can get a little time. I wanted to invite anybody who has a question or a comment regarding your testimony to go ahead and hit *6. Rick will let us know when we need to cut it short.
Anne-Marie?
Anybody like to? Yes.
Anne-Marie, yeah, it's Dick Forgy. I enjoyed Jeff's rendition of what he experienced and the running down of all the false prophecies that Jehovah's Witness made. And you brought up PTSD, and I'd just like the audience to know something. I was diagnosed with the highest diagnosis you could have, which is 100% for PTSD from my service with the Marines in Vietnam. The PTSD that I suffered from being disfellowshipped and all the lies that were told to me that I thought came from God, that was 100% more devastating in my psyche than my combat in Vietnam. And the solution to that for me certainly was, 6 screens. Rick was very, very comforting to me when I first met him 20 years ago. And I did a lot of counseling with the VA on PTSD. For 10 years, I went to counseling, and I got it out of my system. The Vietnam War doesn't bother me. Nothing about the Vietnam War bothers me. Still to this day, I'm traumatized by what the Watchtower put me through. And the solution to that is get good therapy. I can't think of anything better than 6 screens. There are a lot of people, out there that, Dana Angela, for example, and the other couple that Jeff mentioned, listen to those. And there's a lot of people, there's a lot of good books out there, Crisis of Conscience and so forth. But the best thing you can do if you ever want to get this stinking cult out of your system is prayer. Number one thing is prayer. And that you can back that up with listen to Six Screens and get yourself a little support group somewhere. Thank you, Emery. It's a fantastic program.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead.
It's Angela. Can I talk? I just wanted to say to Jeff and to anyone else listening, I agree with Dick Borghi that prayer is the number one most helpful thing. However, it's kind of a bummer that when you get out of there, out of the cults I got out of too, you have this feeling that God is angry with you. But for anyone who's listening, I found out times two that each time God was not mad at me, and I discovered a helpful God who was right there for me just for the asking. But we do have to ask. And I feel like every time I prayed that I got a little bit better. And I asked God literally, I said, please, would you rearrange my brain and rewire it? I literally said that. And I'm telling you, I really believe that he did. And I was able to afford a little bit of counseling. And that lady, after we were done, after I think it was a year or 2 years, that got less and less as time went on. But she said, how did you get better so fast? Because I've worked with some people 30 years and they haven't gotten anywhere near close to what you've gotten. And how did you do this? And I'm like, it definitely is God. It definitely is. You ask him to rearrange your brain and heal your emotions and whatnot. And oh my gosh, he really, really does. And she was just like, whoa, how in the world? But beyond that, I just want to say this is that I don't feel like most people, and I know for sure in my beginning stages, I absolutely had no money. So how do you get started? And I just want to tell you, first of all, God got in my attention came to myself that this book I needed to get was called Codependent No More. So listen for books that people mention and what are you being attracted to, because everyone's attracted to something different. But Codependent No More by Melody Beatty was crazy helpful to me. Very, very difficult to read because I would read it and I'm like, oh my gosh, my family is so dysfunctional, and reading this book and realizing it, and I just wanted to throw that book time and time again, and I followed reading it, but I hated it so much. But I want to tell you what, it helped me so much. And then also Al-Anon, 12-step groups. I went to several different ones. Some were unhealthy, some were healthy. And then also one last thing, and it was good books. Oh shit, and I forgot what I was going to say. Okay, so the Codependent No More, the books, the Al-Anon. There was one other thing, and now I'm not thinking of it right at the moment. But anyway, there's a way that you can get help with no money. And then also the county had some counseling that was for free. And I was able to get some counseling in the county that also helped me because they put you in touch with other really great books that will help you to get free. And but PTSD, there's plenty of books on it, but there's a lot of help without having to pay a lot of money. And definitely prayer along with it is powerful. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. And thank you so much, Anne Marie. Thank you, Jeff. Great show.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you, Angela. Jeff, do you have anything to say back? Go ahead. Yes, go ahead, Ken.
Oh, yeah, this is Ken here from Michigan. I just want to say to Jeff, my heart goes out to you. I'm sorry to hear your experience, but we don't have any good experiences whatsoever with the Watchtower Society. And not only that, the world of religion in general. Right now, as I watch several programs that deal with religion and all that, organized religion in America is getting more and more violent. There's more and more crime and violence being committed in those churches, to include the Watchtower Society, of course.
Oh, I think
so we just hope that we can turn that around here.
Yeah, I think this pedophilia thing is just the tip of the iceberg in Pennsylvania. I mean, it's been going on all over, but I think, they've already arrested 9 guys, And I think I've always thought since the Australian Royal Commission thinking back with the Kingdom Halls and stuff, it'd be a perfect place for a pedophile to hide in plain sight. I mean, because they consider it a sin. They're not going to turn you into the police, and and there's the cover up and everything else, and they have access to kids. It's just terrible, you know. I mean, you talk about the Catholic Church, you'd have one guy that you'd have to worry about was the priest, but, and I'm not saying they're all bad, I'm just saying they had a lot of them. Well, how many elders do you got in a kingdom hall, you know? I mean, just everybody's got to kind of think about that. And, I don't know.
Yeah, well, Jeff sad to say that the experiences we learn here on the 6 screens is only a tip of the iceberg, just a fraction. There's millions upon millions we don't hear about. The pedophile and the rape, incest, and everything like that that's going on in the Watchtower Society and other religions is just the tip of the iceberg. There's millions of cases that we have never heard about, and we're probably never going to hear about. But we do know right now that it's getting worse, and the churches, within the churches, it's getting more violent.
Yes, I'll agree. And that's where, you know, pedophiles go to hide. A lot of them go to religion because they earn trust from people, and they get, I guess, forgiveness and what have you, and acceptance. And it's disturbing, to say the least, you know. And it'll be interesting.
Positively and absolutely, it is very disturbing. I agree on that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, and we're running
Jeff.
short on time.
Hey, Jeff,
let's check in
I
with
wanted to thank you.
Okay, well, everybody have a good day there, and God bless
Thank
be
you,
with you, and I'll get back to Anne Marie here.
Jeff, I wanted
ahead,
to thank
Vicky.
you, and I wanted to know how things are doing there at Lake Manawa. And you have a beautiful town. And
thank you.
And maybe if you get a camera, go around. That might be a good therapy, to get a camera and take some pictures seasonally of the town and Avenue C and Lake Manawa and the trains and all that, because my people were from there long ago. And you have a town that has good neighbors, and your VFW might know where you could get a therapist for free. But again, a camera and taking some beautiful pictures all through the year is a nice way to meet people. And I miss your town, and I miss my family. Bill Baker might still be there. They're good people. And you can turn it around. You can have a happy day every day, and have some good pie and some good coffee. And we love you.
Oh, thank you, Pinky. Thank you very much.
Anne Marie, can I just let's keep this quick. We're really kind of a little short on time. I want to check in with Rick and see how we're doing.
Well, what we have here, Anne Marie, we have an unusual amount of people coming into the 6 screens here on Sunday. I say let's keep the program going for another 10 minutes or so. We got a lot of people still on the line that want to speak up.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to check in with you, my brother. Go ahead, sister. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Okay, honey, it's Constance. I was just going to say, it's a great interview. I always love your interviews, Anne Marie. And, Jeff, anybody that has a very sensitive heart can truly feel your pain. I mean, that's a given. But I was going to say, there is hope, honey, for healing. I just wanted to say, since you had worked, for the railroads, I don't know if you still do, but I had worked for the city and county of San Francisco and other counties as well. In your personnel department, human resources, most of them do have opportunities for free counseling. So that might be something you might want to consider, okay? Because that's really important. You can go to your human resources department and talk to them about free counseling, and they do provide it for their employees. And it is with the professional.
Constance, what I've kind of run into, and I know a gal that's, she's educated and she's a counselor and she's so many years degree. Anyway, she was just floored by what I told her about the Jehovah's Witnesses. She just couldn't comprehend. She goes, "They really do this?" I go, "Yeah." I said, do your research, ma'am. I said, Google this. The shunning is real. I said, the alcoholism within the organization, and she couldn't, that floored her too. She goes, they tell you could drink? I go, yeah, they'll tell you Jehovah says we can. And, you know, I was just saying, you know, all the stuff that's completely floored her. You got to find somebody that is familiar with cults. And I know there are therapists out there that are familiar with the Jehovah Witnesses or just do with cults that, you know, and I'm sure most therapists could still help a person, you know. At my age now, I'll tell you, listening to Six Screens, Rick's show, talking to Dan and Angela, and searching YouTube and watching, I've watched thousands of XJW videos, you know, and just, you know, with that Whiskey Morris in the liquor store, that floored me too. I go, here that clown is Sunday morning buying all this alcohol, waiting in a meeting or out in service, or I was just floored by that. And then loads it in a Cadillac, something else.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, honey, that, you know, I've been to quite a few XJW groups, which has been very, very healing. And Rodney Allgood, I don't know if you know who he is, but he's an XJW in Las Vegas. He has quite a few support groups of just XJWs throughout the country. So, you know, I don't know what state are you in?
I'm in Iowa.
You're in Iowa. Okay, honey. He tries to have them throughout. I'm not saying he has it in every state, but if you can try to hook up, or I'll keep my eyes open if there is going to be one in Iowa. He has one in Sacramento area, like once a month, and it's a luncheon. But the other thing I wanted to say to you is that I had the opportunity to meet a gal who was a regular pioneer, and she's out of the organization, and she's a therapist. She's got her master's degree. She's down she's down in San Diego. I even have her phone number and everything if you want it. But, you know, the best is to go to someone who was a JW and who is an ex-JW and a therapist. So if you want her information, you can certainly reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to give you her phone number.
Okay. Yeah, we're on Messenger. I mean, yeah, sure. Yeah, that's something I was going to say. It's hard to tell somebody what you went through that was not in the organization. I mean, they'll look at you and they'll shrug their shoulders. Well, why didn't you just leave? Well, they just don't get it, you know. I mean,
it's the mind control. The mind control is why they don't get it. We didn't just get tricked into believing a religion. We had constant subliminal indoctrination, hypnotism exercised on us. That's why we had that schedule of meetings. That's why they have you studying. That's why they have you going out in service or reporting time, because there's no better way to reinforce your indoctrination than to teach it to somebody else. That is why my husband and so many other people say, well, why did you fall for that? Well, why didn't you just leave? They use subliminal, hypnotic mind control, and the witnesses don't know it. That's why you hear everybody at the meetings and at the assemblies, they're all staring like, unblinking with their mouths open, nodding their heads, and then at the end of the session, it's like, oh, wasn't that a wonderful talk? Oh, but nobody seems to remember what it was that was so great.
Yeah. Well, they occupy your time. They definitely just, that they give you have no time to think. You know, anyway, when I was in, I couldn't, I was either going to a study or on service or a meeting, and you just didn't have time to think outside the box. I mean, and that's all well planned, figured out within that organization to do that. And,
Hey, we got a number around the callers. We only got a few minutes left here, but we just had a caller come in, a brand new caller If you want to come back, I think it was 518. I'm not sure what area code it was, but if you want to come back in, I see that you never called into the program before. He was in the zone there for a while, but he left us. But we'll see what happens, see if he comes back in. But I wanted to mention to you, Jeff, that coming up this Saturday night on the 6 screens at 9:30 this Saturday night, we have a professional behaviorist. The woman works she's a former Jehovah's Witness. She contacted us. She's going to come on. Fran and Joe are going to be interviewing her. She's going to be helping witnesses. A professional. She works in that business. And a professional person works out of a hospital setting. So she really knows her stuff. So that's Saturday night right here, 9:30. So don't miss that, Jeff.
Sure. I will. I always tune in. So
excellent. We've got that. We got that. Okay, we got that 951 area code. Go ahead. You're on with us. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, hi, Rick. This is Danette Lewis. I've been on your show before. I just wanted to let you guys know that here in San Diego, California, there has been open justice case, and numerous elders have been prosecuted. And so sad, I've been angry and PTSD because I was molested by an elder when I was 8 years old. But this one a brother from the church, the religion, he's a lawyer, and he was defending the JW state, the 2 witness rule. I wanted to throw.
Okay. Well, thank you, sister. Thank you for showing up. We're breaking up a little bit, but thank you for coming on the 6 screens. Good to have you on here on Sunday. Thank you. Don't be a stranger. You come back and see us now.
I sure will.
Yes, go ahead, Dan. You're on with us.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, great show, Anne Marie. Great show, Jeff. Really enjoyed it. You know, it's sad to me that the Watchtower is so covert that they spun a web with us about leaving that we never knew. It's like Anne Marie said, they're spinning multiple plates. You know, fear. You know, the thing I didn't realize when I left was the fear I was going to experience after I left, because the Watchtower was spinning a web, using the Bible as a weapon, saying, don't ever leave. Don't ever leave. You're going to have your feet. The scripture for me was your feet were going to be crushed under Jehovah's head. You're going to suffer the second death. There's no resurrection. So I went out with a death curse on me, and it was hell. It was hell. And Watchtower did that, and I did not know it until after I left. It's like taking drugs, and then you go to leave, and you're like, I'm hooked. And so I went to leave.
You feel like you're on death row.
Yes, you are. And they use the Bible to do that. And that's why we end up in the therapies and stuff. But I just want to say a couple things. Rick's show is a great therapy, and I've been to a lot of 12 steps, and I'll tell you what they do. They share their stories. When you go into a 12-step Al-Anon or AA, everyone shares their story, and you can trust them because they're alcoholics or they're codependents or whatever they are. Well, us and the witnesses are recovering witnesses. So when we come out, we can trust each other. I don't know about you guys, but when I was in, the Watchtower didn't promote mental health. They said that they're going to pay the
minute. We have less than a minute.
Well,
I want Jeff to be able to say any last thoughts he might have.
Yeah.
We have less than a minute, okay?
My last
Because I know you want to give your thoughts. Okay, Jeff, do you have any last thought you want to leave us with?
Yeah, Rick's program is totally free. And I encourage all those out there listening, and advice like this, an education that Rick's show is giving is free, and that's the way it should be. And I encourage everybody to tune in to 6 Screen. That's all I got to say.
Jeff, thank you so much. We are so thankful for your time and for your honesty. Thank you, everyone that came in. I want to wish you a happy 6 Screen Sunday. We're going to give it over to Rick. We've used up our extra time. Thank you, Rick.
Well, thank you, Anne-Marie. Thank you. And all of those folks that came in, boy, I'll tell you, we had more people too. I wish we had some more time. But anyways, we're glad that you're listening into the program today. In fact, Anne-Marie and Jeff, if you're still listening, this program here today broke all the records you had in the past, Anne-Marie. More listeners on our radio telephone network and also in our YouTube. It's been wonderful. So keep up the good work, Anne Marie, and thank you, Jeff. And we hope all the best for Jeff. Well, anyways, we got more programs. Thank you, Jeff. We've got more programs coming up here now on the Six Screen Sunday. We're going to go to JW World News Sunday edition coming up next. But also at 4 o'clock, you don't want to miss the Christian Court. Wow, what a program that is. And we have two Bible scholars coming on today, Jay Hess and Dr. Egal German. And, I'll tell you what, this program is really crossing over into the Christian world. But, they're going to be talking about, is alcohol? Why is it some Christians won't drink alcohol? Is it prohibited in the scriptures? And also, what about aliens? What if there are aliens? What's going to happen if all of a sudden aliens show up? And who are these aliens? Well, they'll be discussing it today right here on the Six Screens Telenetwork coming up on the Christian Court. So looking forward to that program. All right, we're going to end this program, and then we're going to go to JW World News. That's the news the Watchtower doesn't want us talking about. So let's end this program right here, which we're doing, and we appreciate